Welcome back to House of Hollingsworth. I'm Kate, and today I'm going to show you the many ways I tried and failed with this shoe cabinet makeover. Now, I'm not sure what this letter sorter cabinet was used for originally, but my client thought it would make a great shoe cabinet for her entryway, and I think that's a fabulous idea. The cabinet had a lot of stains and blemishes, as well as some chipped veneer, but I was confident I could get a nice light oak finish on the exterior and then paint the interior for a two-tone white and wood look. Right, so with the shelves, we're going to have a wood look at the very front, the face of the lip, and then the top and bottom are going to be painted. So I'm just sanding off the old varnish that's coating this so that I have more of a raw look that I can work with. And then I'm going to match the color of this face part to the color of the oak of the actual piece. Okay, that's the wood look that we're going for. The rest will be painted. Now, I thought it would be exciting to have those tiny stripes of wood showing once the rest of the interior was painted white, but as you'll see at the end, we didn't end up doing that, so I needn't have bothered with this step. I've sanded the fronts of the four that were loose, and now I need to take the back off this so that I can get these other shelves out, because they don't slide out the front because there's a piece of wood stopping it there. So we're going to take the backing piece off and then just slide them out the back. I removed the backing sheet as carefully as I could so that it didn't snap, and then I carefully wiggled the shelves out, which was really nerve-wracking because they were a tight fit and I didn't want to break them. I removed all the old nails using a hammer and pincers. Now, denailing thin timber like this is really easy and it's quite relaxing. It's not soul destroying like denailing floorboards or studs can be. Then I moved on to sanding. Remember, the plan was to show off the timber, but unfortunately it's not solid wood, it's just a thin veneer, so I had to sand really carefully with medium grit to try and remove the old stain without burning through the veneer. I did a couple of rounds of patching with a 2-pack epoxy along the bottom edge where the veneer had chipped off, and then I could shape the bottom edge with a sanding block. 2-pack epoxy like Bondo or Builder's Bog sets hard and fast. It's great for patching structural areas like edges, corners and legs. It's sandable but not washable, so I always mix it and apply it with a pop stick on a scrap of something so I can just throw them away afterwards. The more of the coloured part you add, the faster it dries. So once you mix it, you only get a minute or two of workable time before it sets. And this filler isn't stainable, so I planned to paint the wood grain over those patches. I also mixed up a grain filler, which is a watered down mix of wood filler, to fill in the multitude of nicks and gouges on the drawer fronts. The wood filler is stainable, but this was ultimately not necessary, but I didn't know that yet. Now, the plan all along was to use this fabulous paintable wallpaper on the backing piece. It has a textured pattern to it, which just adds that extra little bespoke detail to a plain backing. You can use traditional wallpaper paste or PVA glue to adhere the wallpaper to plywood. Wallpaper paste is cheaper, but I have an abundance of PVA glue at the moment, so that's what I'm using. Start by covering the backing board with glue and spread it out so that it covers every inch. If it's hard to get the air bubbles out, go back and add even more glue. The more glue there is, the easier it is to smooth the air pockets out. Make sure you run your hands over it because you'll be able to feel air bubbles that you can't easily see. Here you can see that I'm spreading glue over the backing board and then layering the wallpaper over it to get the paper wet, then peeling it up in sections and adding even more glue so it's wet enough to easily glide the air bubbles out. While the wallpaper is drying, I went ahead and did a paint wash over the exterior because I was still hoping to get a lovely light wood look on some of this piece. I add 1 tablespoon of taupe coloured paint to 1 cup of water, paint it on in sections, and then wipe it off. Some people don't bother wiping it off, they just let it sink in, but I really struggle to get a good finish like that. So I prefer to paint it on, wipe it off, let it dry, and then I can apply multiple light coats if I need to. And here is the resulting look. From afar, it looks like a nice light oak coloured timber, but unfortunately, when you get up close, it looks really blotchy and gross. I didn't show this, but actually I did a couple of coats of oxalic acid on the stained areas as well, and that didn't work. So at this point, I talked it over with my client and we decided to just paint the entire piece. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you just can't achieve a certain look, even though you've done it dozens of times before. Each piece is different, and I'm so grateful to my client for being so open to a last minute pivot. We decided to add a little more drama by doing the paintable wallpaper on the drawer fronts as well. I spread glue over the drawer front and then add a second layer of glue so that I can easily squeeze the air bubbles out. Then I weigh the paper down so it doesn't curl up at the edges while the glue dries. I'm using Jilly's mineral paint on this piece in the colour King Island. It's a lovely creamy white. I did a test patch to check for bleed through and then went ahead and painted 2 coats on everything, followed by a clear satin top coat. To trim the edges of the wallpapered panels, I just cut the excess off with a Stanley knife and then sanded the edges straight. Once the wallpaper has glue on it and then dries, it becomes quite stiff and easily sandable, just like a thin sheet of balsa wood or plywood. Next up was the handles. I cleaned them up and I still wasn't thrilled, so again we pivoted. I painted them gold instead. I always spray paint a coat of black paint and prime before adding the gold because the gold looks a lot richer when it has a dark layer underneath. And then because I'm using rub and buff for the gold layer, it needs a top coat, so I sprayed a coat of clear enamel to finish it off. As a reminder, here's the before, and at last, here's the finished shoe cabinet in all its glory. I love the creamy white colour with the gold hardware. I love the added detail of the textured wallpaper. You can't really see the wallpapered backing in the videos, but in person it stands out just enough to add some interest. And then I went ahead and oiled the sides of the drawers to highlight the timber, and I added a bold floral drawer liner as well. I hope you enjoyed my shoe cabinet makeover today. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.